Okay, so as you can see, we have a new plane on the bench, an Avanti S. This is my Christmas present from Mum and Dad, so thank you very much to them. Freewing Avanti, bought from Sussex Model Centre, but the UK or Europe distributors are Motion RC, who are known for things, for great distribution of fantastic jets. It's quite late at night. I'm quite tired, so apologies if I'm a little bit scatterbrained, but I've cut off the connector. The connector that comes with it, slightly less butchered when it comes from the factory, but is a EC5. I hate them with a passion. So I'm going to put it on the battery connectors I use to match with all our 6S batteries, which are these 5mm. There's the female. There's that other one, the male. There we are. So I'm just going to tin these and then solder these in here, and we'll get that soldered up and heat shrinked. Okay, so got the servo for the rudder in the servo tester set to neutral. The arm isn't perfectly straight, but it's not far off. So this is the shortest arm. You get 7 arms in the box. This is the shortest single one. There's some information there on all the rest of them. But yeah, that needs lining up there, which is about right. We're just pressing it on top of the ball, not putting it all the way on. What I'll do now is put it all the way on and then link it up here. It does actually come with little close up things, which is very nice, instead of a Z-bend. So we'll get that connected up and do the same with the tail as well. Okay, so a little bit of weirdness. So 55mm, yes, I've got two at 55mm. 63mm, yes, I've got two at 63mm. But these should be 55 and I've got two that are 60. So it's better being long than too short, but it can be a bit confusing. And obviously I just got the one size that was on its own and fitted into the rudder. So yeah, let's try and get this fitted. Okay, so that's them now successfully connected. They are they're a little bit further than what I'd like, but they don't seem to be going anywhere. So we should be alright. So now it's just a case of screwing them onto the fuselage. Okay, so I've managed to route the wires with a little bit of difficulty through here. I had a long pair of pliers. I've also taken the battery tray out, as you can see here, just to help free the wires under there, and then I'll put them back in. They connect into this lovely little board at the front here, and then all of these will go into the receiver. So just 4 screws here. It's a shame they're kind of exposed. It'd be nice if they were sort of under the fin and then you put the fin on top, like on the Taft Hobbies models. But yeah, let's have a look at installing the fin. Okay, so as you can see, the servos and the wing are now connected, and we have the flashing light wherever it is there, and flashing on the bottom as well. So longer ones are the ailerons, from what I understand. It's obviously set for neutral. This you actually need to crank all the way over before you connect it to this and keep this level. And when you actually have it connected, they are absolute barn doors. They are 90 degrees at full chat. That's going to be really interesting to see what it performs. So I'm going to connect the other side up, and then that's probably where I'm going to leave it for tonight, and possibly for this video. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, so hopefully you can see very much barn doors. For some weird reason, on this side I've had to, I mean that one isn't too bad, but you can really see on that one how much I've had to screw this in to get it to fit. And it is the right one, I have double checked it. It just seems massively long, or this arm doesn't go across quite as much. Actually looking at that, compared to that, that's definitely the case. Let me just neutral. So that's bang up right. That's also bang up right, but this one seems to move more. But as you can see in the top right of your picture, that does move more than this one does. Possible dodgy servo. Never mind, we'll see what happens. But yeah, let's see what happens next. Alright, so I'm not sure what's going to be in the background of this, whether it's just going to be a blank screen or if I'm going to find some video of this plane flying or whatever. But it's finished, it's not been flown yet because the weather in the UK has been quite snowy and hovering around the 0 degree mark, which where we fly, which is quite high up with quite a bit of wind, would suck. And I would have come back with no fingers. So I've made a list of things sort of in a random order to sort of go through to do my sort of final thoughts on the build and some of the other things that you didn't actually see in video. The only other thing that I really had to do, which is the first thing on the list, was the canopy. So the canopy comes in two halves. You have the foam piece, and then you have like the plastic actual clear canopy that goes around it. And contrary to some of the videos and or pictures, it's not smoked. It is just clear. And what you get is you basically get a sticker for the dashboard, which is slightly too big, annoyingly, so it looks a little weird. And then you have to glue the canopy on, and obviously you can put your own pallets in if you want to. Now, a lot of this is going to be compared against Taft Hobbies, because I have the Taft Hobbies Viper jet I bought for my dad. The Taft Hobbies Quantum biplane jet, slightly strange. They're the only other EDF jets I've had, other than a Phase 3 Squall many years ago for one circuit before I broke it. But anyway, so the canopy, gluing it on, basically I used the included glue, just went around all the foam where it needs to be. Make sure you don't do it in places where it doesn't need to be, otherwise it looks awful. I then, well, what should I say, what I did first was I put a layer of cling film between the plane and the foam piece of the canopy, so it wasn't glue the canopy on. Cling film, for other countries, if you don't have it, is like plastic that clings to itself, hence the cling bit of the name, but you usually wrap like sandwiches in it and things like that. Any sort of sheet that won't let the glue get through, so maybe greaseproof paper could be another option, but don't, as I say, if you've got cling film in your country, or sandwich wrap, or whatever you call it, because Americans usually name things very literally, then use that. So I did a layer of that, clamped it on. It did stick a little bit, but like with some heave-ho it came off. I don't really like this idea. I prefer what the Viper jet uses, which is basically they seal it in from the factory, but you can take the seats out. So it has all the dashboard in. If there is one in the Viper jet, it would be in there. You can, and if not, you've got the door to put it in yourself. And you would glue your figurines to the seats, and then you can put the seats in. They're tight from the factory. Mine over time has actually started the seats more or less falling out, especially when it's colder. On landing, you see that the seats are sat on top of the battery. But yeah, I think that's a better way of doing it. Second thing that I want to mention is not necessarily a problem with the plane, it was a problem with my equipment. Basically, when I finished the plane, I had to go around the whole thing again when it was plugged into the receiver, which I'm actually going to add another thing on there. Actually, it's going to be after that one. Sorry, I did make a small plan about this, but I'm editing it as we go along. So, when I finished and had everything in the receiver, I actually had to go around more or less everything again and do manual adjustments to all the controllers, which is the way that you should do it, but it'd be nice if you could sub-trim it a smidgen, which I ended up doing because I had like the aileron one slightly down, one slightly up, so just a little bit of sub-trim, sorting everything out, because I couldn't bother to try and take the ball links off again. And that does sort of roll into the board that all servos go into. So it's not an AS3X system or anything like that. It's basically a fancy wire lead system and a way to convert the sort of balance lead type connections for the wings into regular servo connections. Now, the Viper Jet and the Quantum from Taft Hobbies have a similar board. It looks less quality, because it's just a green circuit board with pins soldered into it. Whereas the one from Freewing does look better. But my main problem is that with the Viper Jet, the main reason that they have these boards is these planes have like 13 servos in. So without using loads of wire leads or you having to have a very high channel receiver, this board sort of mixes them together in ways to minimise, you only need a 6-channel receiver with one of these planes, or 5 in case of the Quantum, because it doesn't have flaps. Elevator, aileron, throttle, rudder, gear, and flaps, depending on the model. And that's great, but what's really good about the Taft ones is if you don't trust the board, and you want redundancy, or if you want to program extra features, you can more or less split them into all their individual channels. Like gear comes on one wire, but like I think the flaps you can make separate, and the ailerons you can make separate. And with the with the Avanti, you can only really do that with the elevators and the rudder. Whereas with the Viper Jet, you can more or less do it with anything, which is great. But the problem that you have with the Freewing one is that I was very limited on what I can do. Like, for example, I can't do crow brakes. If I wanted to do crow brakes, ailerons up, flap down. Can't do that. Whereas if I wanted to, I think I could do on the Taft Viper Jet, because you can split it into all the different channels. So I actually have a 7-channel running my Avanti, but on the Viper Jet I have an 8-channel, and I think all the channels are used up, so I can mix things together. There's redundancy as well. So yeah, I like the idea of the board, but I would also like if you could take it out. Whether you would supply the different cables in the box, or whether it would be like the one in the Taft where you just pull all the servo leads out. Another thing that I also want to mention on this board, which is why I was adding into the Word document, is where the cables come out the boards, they're just male-to-male connectors, similar to what you used to get with like DJI NASA flight controllers. You get them still with the FY41. People used to have it sort of with the original sort of flight controllers like KK boards, things like that, where you just had the little short male-to-male connections. That's what they use. And I noticed when I was programming it, I would have like a little 4-cell NiCad plugged into the receiver instead of the throttle, just to stop it suddenly shooting off the table if anything happens. And I kept accidentally pulling cables out of the board. Now, they are just pins onto a board, pins with then the servo connection over. So it's not like it's broken, but it's something that I'm a bit on. I mean, I would prefer that to possibly that weight being hung from a solder point where it could break off, but I may end up putting a little bit of hot glue over those connections just to stop them coming out. I don't see them coming out now. The receiver is put in place and everything's hooked up, ready to go, but it was something that I was slightly concerned about. Going on to sort of the battery board, I'm shifting things around so they're in a more sensible order. The straps for the battery, I ended up swapping. What comes with it is a very good strap, like a metal bracket, a metal loop to put the strap through and everything. It's very nice. But it also comes with like the stuff that some people seem to think is better, but I don't see how it is. Instead of using Velcro, you use like this rubbery stuff. And I understand the idea is, well, it makes it easier to get it out. Yeah, fair enough, but also it makes it easier to get out when it's in flight. And if you use that piece of rubber, then you can just stick Velcro in anyway, unless you've got spare. But most of my planes use Velcro, and lots of it. So we have like bits of plastic we slide between Velcro on planes where it's a challenge to get them out. So yeah, what I ended up doing is I ended up just putting in Velcro, and also I actually upgraded the straps. So I got 2 of my own Velcro straps so that both ends of the battery are held, because basically the way they have the slots in the Avanti, you can have a Velcro strap at the front of the battery or a Velcro strap at the back of the battery, and that's about it. There's not a lot else we can really do. So I decided to take theirs out and use 2 of my own Fastener, is the brand, straps. They're fine, don't need to be doubled up, they're like bang on the right size, the 300mm ones, foot long, 12-inch. The other thing that I'm not really happy about with the battery board, considering I took it out a few times to mess about with straps as well as to put the servo leads underneath, is that they are self-taper screws, and the plywood that the battery tray is made out of seems like very cheap plywood. So the head is actually going through the ply quite a lot each time. But it was such a pain to put the screws in, because it wouldn't magnetise to a lot. I ended up not putting washers behind them because it was just too much of a faff. And maybe there's one with a washer that I managed to do. So I'm slightly concerned about that. It'd been nice to have seen like the rails that go down the side, and then with some doublers underneath with a proper like claw nut in, so you can use properly screwing in, and you can use proper Allen screws with washers behind, but sadly not the case. C of G, I more or less plonked the battery in the middle of the tray, and it balanced. In terms of where it balances, check the manual, but there is somewhere on there where it more or less lines up. From what I can remember, it's like the corner of where the cable starts. Again, it's always better to be nose heavy than tail heavy. If I can remember, I will take the manual with me the first time I fly it. The first time I go flying this, I'm going to be flying that and the My Twin Dream, because that still hasn't flown yet. But there's also the C of G, which I've just done. The flaps, now I've set them up on the radio and not with that dodgy servo tester. They are more or less fine. One is slightly before the other, but it's within tolerance for me. And the way I set it up originally is, I set it up on a 3-position switch, so all the way up, middle, down, to sort of check that they stayed in the right places at all the extremes. It's a lot easier to do than spin the dial around. I can't remember if I've actually moved that off the switch, because on the Viper Jet I just have it on a 3-position switch. Take off on medium, land on full. Whereas the what I plan to do on the Avanti is have it on my slider on the left-hand side near my throttle. Because, when you're coming into land or whatever, the right hand's busy with elevators and ailerons. The throttle, you don't really use the rudder that much on a landing until after you've landed, depending on the model, obviously. But yeah, there's that. And last thing, which is sort of like a public service announcement. So when I was building mine, I had 2 screwdrivers. I had your sort of classic toolbox screwdriver, which we got from B&Q maybe 10 years ago for £1 in one of the boxes you're leaving. Which is ever so slightly, it's bang on the same size as the hole as the screws go in, on the tail. And then we have our sort of designed for computer and electronic technician screwdrivers. And I ended up, because of the issues with the big proper screwdriver, I ended up putting the tail in with the computer electronic screwdriver, which are great, and give you a bit more finer control, but you can't put that much torque behind them because your hands will slip, whereas the proper toolbox ones, it's designed for you to be able to put some torque into it. And when I was moving it one day, the tail just felt loose and barely held on, and I was able to actually, with a load of faffing about and a little bit of oil, get the proper big one in, and I was able to do 2 turns more or less on all screws. So I really would recommend trying to get a screwdriver with a decent head, that you can get some purchase on, and to make sure that it's really tightened up, but still has a thin enough shaft to fit in the appropriate holes. Take that as you will. But anyway, it hasn't flown yet, as I say. The weather at the moment is, I haven't got my Apple Watch on me, so it doesn't tell me what the temperature is, but most of yesterday it didn't get above 3 degrees. I think 3 degrees was the highest at midday. That's in Celsius, of course, because I'm in the UK and we use Celsius and inches and millimetres and Fahrenheit and fucking everything. But anyway, that is sort of the conclusion of the build and sort of my thoughts on the build. It does seem more powerful than the Viper Jet, and it's slightly smaller, so I do expect it to be a bit of a better performer, because the Viper Jet, once it's in the air, is fine, but it quickly runs out of puff in a straight-up climb, as well as when you're taking off, it needs all the runway in the world. So hopefully this Avanti will look a little bit more professional, and if I was to actually get a jet, it would probably be an Avanti, because you can fly it like a normal sort of sport jet, but there is also thrust vectoring nozzles and things available for them, so you can do 3D and things with them. So if I ever got a bit bored of it, you can stick the thrust vector, maybe have it for a season without, and then the next season put that in, because it'd be expensive, because it's 2 more servos, all the tubing and everything, which is about 300 quid. But, yeah, so that is the Avanti S for now. I will update you, of course, when it has been test flown, and also, while there was a bit of a break over after Christmas, and I was spotted last year, this should hopefully mark the return of weekly Friday uploads to this channel. Some of them will be build videos, some of them will be talking episodes like this latter half has been, and some of them may even be flight videos, very excitingly, and maybe in summer you'll get more than one a week, because I'll be doing actual more flying at that point. I haven't flown this year yet. I didn't think I flew in December either, so I'm going to be rusty. But yeah, thank you all for watching this. If you enjoyed, please click the like button. It helps you out a lot. Remember to subscribe if you're new, because only like 2% of the people who watch this channel are actually subscribed. The rest of them are not. So if you want to help me book that trend, that would be nice. And comment if you have any questions about the Avanti S. I will try and answer them the best I can. But thank you for watching. See you on the next one. Bye bye.